You're just going to probably get started. I'll let Christine and Beth introduce themselves. I'm Jonathon Harline. I'm the communications team lead at Boyle Street Community Services, and this is our presentation, What About Housing? So Beth and Christine, you can take it away.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Beth Muller. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Housing Operations Manager. And I'm here today with my colleague, Christine, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christine Davies. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Housing First Services Manager. And welcome, everyone.
I'm sorry, who has control of the slides?
That's me. Did you want me to?
Okay. Yes. All right. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, we'll go on to the next slide. It's just a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to have a quick chat about Boyle Street. Christine will talk about Boyle Street's current housing supports. I will talk about new initiatives Boyle Street has taken on, and then we will wrap up with some questions. So Boyle Street has been around for over 50 years. We have over 40 programs and services that span across Edmonton. We have multiple sites for group living that cater to children and youth. We have mental health services that provide counseling, referrals, and addiction supports. We have street outreach and encampment response teams. So when you call 311 to report an encampment, our team is one of the teams that responds to those reports. We also have an employment readiness program, that works very closely with our social enterprises that include Boyle Street Ventures and Higher Good. Of course, these are only a few of the programs that Boyle Street offers, but at the core, Boyle Street's mission is to end homelessness, and all our programs are working towards that main goal. Of course, we cannot end homelessness without also offering housing programs. And Christine will take it from here.
Yes, thank you. So some of the housing supports that Boyle Street provides. So first we have our housing intake and referrals. So currently right now, Boyle Street has one dedicated person to assist with intakes for housing programs and referrals. So this person is our first point of contact for anybody that is interested in housing programs. So what generally happens is somebody comes and they ask about housing. This person provides an appropriate assessment of their housing situation, so how long they've been houseless, and then we start connecting them to relevant services. Generally, this person also provides all of our housing teams a weekly housing list of advertised vacancies and generally some landlords that we've worked with previously in the past. So there's a little diagram here. So our participant comes in, we review some of the housing options. So we try and figure out, okay, what is it that you need? Do you need market housing? What are your kind of goals for housing? Because it could be individualized. Then we get the participant to participate in a intake housing assessment, which is called a V1 SPDAT. And this is just to address any barriers and figure out what the needs to housing are. After the intake's completed, the participant gets added to the by names list. So this is a wait list that Homer Trust has. And then we start connecting them to referrals to different housing teams, which we'll discuss next. So one of the housing teams that Boyle Street has is called Housing First. So this program is funded by Homer Trust, and there are 9 participating agencies across Edmonton. So those unhoused for more than 1 year are eligible to complete an intake assessment, and then they are added to the by names list. When a housing worker has space on their caseload, they attempt to contact somebody from the by names list via coordinated access through Homer Trust. The housing worker then completes an intake, so just kind of figuring out what the participants' needs are, any areas that they feel they want to live in, and then they start the search for market housing needs and preferences. So generally we try and go by 3 viewings just to make sure that the participant feels that they have a choice in where they are choosing to live. Once the housing worker gets the participant housed, the client is then connected to a follow-up support worker for the remainder, for the continuing 12-month program. So generally, we do say that Housing First is 1 year, but we do recognize that sometimes it takes a lot longer for participants to stabilize into market housing. And that's while we're trying to connect them to community resources, getting them used to the area that they're now living in, teaching them how to build relationships with their landlords, learning the tenant and landlord rights. We're helping them with budgeting. We're getting them connected to any employment services, and we're assisting them on teaching them how to pay some of their utility bills. Just for some perspective, the by names list currently has 3,256 names on it, and more names are added by the day. Another program that we have that has emerged from Housing First is called our Housing Outreach Program. So the abbreviation is HOP. And this is a collaborative partnership with Bissell. And HOP was intended to address more attentive, more complex individuals. And so we're seeing our individuals a lot more often. We're seeing them up to 3 times a week. And we generally have smaller caseloads just so that we can provide a more holistic case support. So instead of having just a housing worker and a follow-up support worker, it is all completed by one caseworker that follows the participant right from when we're doing the housing to when we're looking to graduate and transfer them over. So our target population is still those who are entrenched in homelessness. And the referral process is also a little bit different. So HOP can do some of their own outreach. And then we have a partnership with both Street Outreach and our encampment team within Boyle Street and other teams on the Bissell side as well. So the nice thing about HOP is we do have more flexibility when it comes to timelines. So we are not a 1-year program or a 2-year program. We kind of just base that timeline on whether or not how we are stabilizing our individuals and what that looks like. Another benefit of HOP is we are also able to provide support with participants who fall under the supportive housing category. So we are assisting with getting them into the wait list, we are taking them to the appointments, and we're connecting them with the supportive housing supports. The main goal of HOP is to work towards stabilizing our participants and then hopefully graduating them into the Housing First program, independence, or the supportive housing. And then our final one is supportive referrals. So this one is for the little bit less complex individuals. So for individuals who have been unhoused within a year, and then generally a support worker does the referral and then they follow up for about once a month for 6 months, just to ensure that we're maintaining tenancy. So we do provide short-term financial supports such as damage deposit, first month's rent, and then there is limited funding for this program. So it does have a little bit more of a strict referral process, and we do put a lot of work into gaining as much information as possible just to make sure that because it is less support, that we're putting the right people into this program. And then I will pass it over to Beth.
Thanks, Christine. So the programs that Christine has just talked about are programs that Boyle Street has run for quite some time. Housing First, we've been running for, I believe, over a decade now. But Boyle Street, especially in the last couple of years, has recognized that there needs to be more variety or opportunities for people we serve in terms of their housing choices. And so we have taken on alternative housing strategies One that we've been in since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic was bridge housing. We currently run one of 3 sites within Edmonton. And as I said, these programs were created in response to COVID. They're short term, so usually people stay around 60 to 90 days. And really it's just a period of stabilization for people who are in housing first, as they transition from getting off the streets and moving into an apartment. And then the other one that we have just recently opened up is a transitional housing. We refer to it more as flexible housing. And we're focusing on trying to meet people where they're at. So we're not really having timeframes on people while they're in our transitional housing. Our focus is more on creating community and really building people's confidence and empowering them and finding their identity. So our program, though, is specifically for female identifying individuals. And then finally, congregate housing. So this is also known as rooming houses, and they're not always having the best reputations, rooming houses, but what Boyle Street has learned from bridge housing is that there's actually a lot of benefit to that congregate housing situation. Often people find a lot of community and support and acceptance within these kind of living arrangements. And often people who, they don't have this experience. People don't often have that experience when they're moving into apartments. So like for an example, we had a participant in our Housing First program. I believe it was last year, could have been more than a year ago at this point. But when we took this person on, they were sober and they were really focused on wanting to keep that sobriety. But when they're placed in their apartment, they started feeling lonely. They started falling into depression, and they fell back into their addictions. And it resulted in them being evicted. Fortunately, at that time, there was multiple bridge housing locations that were open, and the support worker was able to put them back into a bridge housing site. And during that time, the person was back there. They were able to get stabilized. They started treatment for managing their opioid dependence, and they really talked a lot with their support worker about how supported they felt within that bridge housing site. So Boyle Street is trying to find other ways of providing housing, congregate housing, but at a smaller scale. So Sandy's Place is our bridge housing site. As I mentioned, it's one of 3 remaining bridge housing programs within the city. Due to funding, however, it will be closing at the end of March. It has taught Boyle Street the importance of having a period between transitioning from homelessness to moving into an apartment. We have utilized hotel spaces to provide these temporary accommodations. We offer meals, there are staff on site, and we are very fortunate to have a partnership with a security company who has shown a lot of care and compassion when they're interacting with our community. And with this partnership, we are able to ensure that people's daily needs are met and harm reduction supplies are provided. You know, all that, people are just feeling more supported. Our capacity right now is only at 25, which isn't a very high number, but our view is that 25 people off the street is better than not offering the program at all. So we're happy to provide 25 spaces, and we're hoping to provide a bit more in the future. But that's all in the works. And then our next program is Sikita Kikino. So again, this came in response to COVID-19, recognizing that not all programs for housing work for people who are experiencing houselessness. So we're striving to provide different options and provide choice. Sakita Kikinau is Cree. It means house of love. And through a private partnership with the Gather Co organization, we were able to bring this program to fruition. They provided us a beautiful historical site downtown. I believe the building was built in 1912, and every room is very different from the next. This housing initiative really focuses on coaching the residents to be able to move into market housing eventually. Like I've said before, we have no time limit on how long a person can stay. When we were first thinking about this program, we thought that, you know, people could stay for 6 months or a year, 2 years, but the idea was always that people would eventually move on. But as we've been going through this program and we've accepted some people, we found that there are probably going to be people who are going to be there for as long as that Boyle Street is running this program. And we're okay with that, because that means that this person has found safety and security and stable housing, and we are in no way going to be pushing them on from that. It's interesting, like oh, not just yet, Christine.
Right.
It's okay. I have so much to say about Sakita Kikinau because I've just worked so hard on this program. Often when people apply to the program, we ask them what housing means to them, and they often don't really have an answer. But interestingly, they are able to tell us like what a home isn't, and we really work with them on that. And we're really proud to be able to provide a safe and stable environment for women to experience what a home can be and what a community is. All right, so now on to Montrose House. So this is a completely new initiative. So Boyle Street has recently purchased a house and we're exploring that congregate living aspect of housing, but on a smaller scale. So our goal is to provide long-term affordable housing to people. We do not have funding for this initiative, but we are looking to accept people who perhaps are within Housing First or our employment mentorship program. Having offered Housing First for quite some time, we often see that people are stable, but they don't always have the financial capacity to be able to maintain an apartment by themselves. And so, and also along with that, we've had participants who have identified that, hey, like, I don't want to live alone in an apartment. I want to live with other people around. I want to live with people that are like also part of my community. And so this is just an opportunity we're hoping for people who are, you know, graduating from Housing First, who identify as wanting to live with other people and having other people around, so that they're able to keep housing and be stable. And then the house is currently under renovations, but we do hope to have it open very soon, within the next month, or hopefully in the new year. And that is all from me. Christine, you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so some things that we kind of wanted to go through was just some reality. I know there's a lot of expectation when, you know, people hear housing and when we're dealing with houselessness. So we wanted to just point out a few things. So first, 1 in 4 Indigenous peoples are living in poverty. Another thing that we see is the average rent right now for a 1-bedroom apartment is ranging from $800 to $1,000. And right now, the income support is currently sitting at $837. So that's barely enough to cover rent for a 1-bedroom apartment, and be mindful that the population that we're serving experience severe physical or mental health barriers and they are unable to work. So that kind of puts some of the housing barriers into perspective when we're trying to house people and put them into some market housing options. Is again, the 1-year program. How are we getting our participants, able to sustain long-term housing when, we only provide a certain amount of rental assistance, and, we're working towards them being fully independent, but again, there's a lot of barriers that we're seeing. So homelessness is citywide, yet most of the services are only accessible in the downtown area. So a lot of the drop-in centers, shelters, and, even if we're moving people into the south side or we're moving people into the west side, there's really, again, not many accessible services being provided to our participants. So that kind of leads into the next one, where current housing processes often place people outside of their communities and networks. So being mindful that when we are putting people into market housing, we are pulling them away from their communities, from people that they're familiar with, and isolating them into their own apartments, which is why we do see a lot of evictions and guest management issues. So often addictions start as a result of losing housing, a way to stay awake and protect themselves as a coping mechanism when they do end up without a home. And most housing models follow a westernized individualistic approach. And this one's a really big one that we see quite a bit with HOP and Housing First, is a lot of our community members are profiled by landlords, and they tend to be placed in high-risk buildings or areas. A lot of the times that we're seeing our community members have their apartments being taken over by gang members and just being in a lot of unsafe situations, again, which is another barrier. And when we're thinking about housing and what becoming housed is, so something that we've seen working in the housing sector is this is a mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical process. It's not just, physically placing somebody into an apartment and, taking them from their encampment or anything like that. It's a process, and it's not linear, and it's an imperfect system. Even with services and supports, it's not always as simple. Again, we're going through those landlord barriers. We're going through people being in vulnerable situations. Another thing that we see quite often is funding for housing services. This often changes, and that creates more inconsistency for both staff and community members. And, a lot of the time they're used to chaos, they're used to inconsistency. So it makes it really difficult when housing becomes that as well. And then providing housing brings a lot of challenges. We see financial challenges, as you guys saw with the Alberta Works current number, and then the difficulty of getting on AISH and the length of time that it takes. There's mental, physical, and spiritual barriers as well. And then we're all just trying to provide as many options as possible, and then just making sure that we're recognizing home means something different for each community member. It does not look the same, kind of like Beth said. And we're always looking for alternative options and trying to move outside of the westernized idea of what housing looks like. And then we've reached our question time.
So I'll pop back on here, and the Q&A is open for anyone to just kind of, if they don't want to talk about their question aloud, but also if you raise your hand, I can click the allow to talk, and you can just ask your question, and we can have more of a discussion. So I'll give it a few minutes in case anyone wants to ask any questions. Again, the Q&A widget is open, or you can raise your hand, and I'll allow you to speak. While you're formulating your questions, I just wanted to thank Beth and Christine for giving the presentation from Boyle Street. I not quite bullied them into it, but I definitely was pretty demanding that they do it. So I wanted to thank them. and thank for all their hard work that they do in regards to housing. They're really a dream team when it comes to getting people the resources they need. So thank you, Beth and Christine.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan.
All right. I'm not seeing anyone typing, and I don't see any hands up. Here we go. Here's a question. Would Montrose Place have staff on site?
We won't have staff there regularly, but we will have a staff member checking in every so often. What that looks like, we haven't decided yet, but we won't have one staff there full time. We're contemplating having, I guess, kind of like a resident, I don't want to say resident manager, but someone who might oversee taking care of the property, landscaping, and kind of be someone that other residents can go to.
And then another question coming in. Are there any options out there for houseless folks who have pets?
There isn't.
Yeah.
Unless they go through the Housing First program and they find a landlord that accepts pets. However, there usually is a cost to that, and that cost does fall on the participant.
Yeah.
It is a gap. We recognize that it is a gap.
Yeah.
Give it a few more moments just in case anyone else has any questions, but thank you for answering those. We are coming up on the end of our scheduled time, but looking like, oh, here we go. Another one coming in. The question is, what keeps you up at night these days? It seems like everything is so overwhelming.
That's a really good one. It falls into, we were just talking about that with one of Boyle Street's values is take success in like the little things. So we really try to celebrate the small things that we're able to kind of accomplish, because housing can be very overwhelming. But for myself, and I think for the teams and stuff, we take success in the small things that we're able to achieve. So whether that's getting somebody connected with a doctor, or actually getting somebody on income, or advocating for somebody with a landlord to not get evicted, and we're working on some of that prevention stuff. So that would be my answer. Yeah.
It's interesting because I was having a conversation about this with one of my staff earlier, about how I'm constantly thinking about programs and how I can how we can find solutions to a lot of the challenges that come up in terms of mental health, addictions. My programs, people are already in a place, and so it's a matter of finding a connection with them so that we can keep them there. And so that can be challenging, and we have to often think outside the box. But our goal is to keep people inside and not try to find every way possible from, having people go back into homelessness. And there's just a variety of different situations that are always coming up. So it keeps us on our toes. It keeps us up at night sometimes.
Yeah, and then just a comment from Brandon at Homeward Trust. Great job. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we can say goodbye. Thank you, everyone, who came out to attend this meeting. It was great to share this information with everyone. It was great to have this out and just to keep increasing the awareness. The recording for this will be up shortly. I'm not sure exactly when, but you can share it with your networks. Thank you all again for coming. And with that, think we can say goodbye.
Perfect.
Thank you, everyone.